appreciate that passage. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to another beautiful spring day.
Preach the word.
What are you laughing? I've got roses blooming in my yard. I've got trees that are ready to bud. It's springtime, isn't it? This has got to be the shortest winter we've experienced. I'll take that back. I can remember back in 1985 in Cairo, Egypt, where I was 30 miles due west of Cairo in a tent. And that night, it got down to 40 degrees, which there was pretty cold. But the next day, around 12 o'clock, it got up to 128 degrees. That was a short winter. I don't think it's going to be quite that short here. But the point is, just like so many other things, we find that time is constantly on the move. We find that here we are, from the beginning of creation right down to today, man has watched the sun, the moon, and various planets because they are very accurate natural timepieces. From these heavenly sources, we base our calendars. From these points in time, we attach events, people, spaces to create what we call our life experiences. And that is how we define time. Today is the last Sunday in the calendar year for 2024. During this period of time, we've laughed, cried, worked, worried, planned, witnessed babies being born, gone to funerals, endured the heat, and welcomed the cold. For many people, this was just another year. For most people, things go on from year to year without much change. Let's look at your past. I'll give you a few examples of mine. I can remember back when a candy bar was a nickel, and a Coke was a nickel too. And the Coke came in a bottle, not a can. And 3 Jawbreakers, hard candy, was a penny. I can remember back when my father complained about the price of gasoline had jumped from 29 cents to 30 cents a gallon. Incredible. I can remember back the introduction of the TV set in 1947. It had only 3 stations. It came on from 6 to 10 a.m. in the morning, went off, and came back on at 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the evening. The most popular shows were the Mickey Mouse Club at 4 p.m., that was for the kids, and the evening news at 6 p.m., that was for the adults. I remember, a little bit closer, in 1924, I had 2 very long visits to the hospital. I hope I don't have to experience that again this year. All these things I've mentioned, and I can remember hundreds of different things. I didn't create them. I couldn't eliminate them, and I had very little power to change any of these things. Like the book of Ecclesiastes, my remembrances were nothing more than secular, materialistic, and fatalistic, which have occurred while I happened to be on this planet. In 1965, a musical London-based group called the Byrds put this passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 to music. In the last stanza of the song, they sang the words, "I hope it's not too late." This is what's implied in this passage. Things come, things go. We have very little power to change any of these things, but we hope it's not too late. We find that we have limited power. I was a school teacher, special ed, early intervention for 30 years. As a teacher, I found out one of the most difficult concepts to teach is the concept of time. In the normal grade structure, most kids have difficulty grasping the concept of time since it's not concrete but abstract. Translation, you can't touch it, taste it, feel it, smell it. Therefore, it becomes very, very hard for them to understand. But we find that in the last 100 years that we have actually been able to measure time, and we've even added on certain sections of time, such as seconds, nanoseconds, microseconds, in order to measure the speed, not of ourselves, but the speed of our machines. We're still here, but our speed of our machines is going faster than we are. For some people, that's sort of a daunting little situation. We've come to the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025. As with all measurements of time, we've experienced the past, and I'd like my few examples. You have a lot of memories, have a lot of ideas. I think I've got the sort of the corner on the market with that. I've got 73 years of memories. Can you read that? No, I don't think so. But we find that the present is very fleeting. We're going to measure the present right now. Are you ready? Everybody pay attention. We're going to measure time. Go. Stop. Present is very, very fleeting. It can come and go, but we find, just like the little boy with the loaves and the fishes in the Bible, most of us have only one thing in our hands today. We only think about today. We only think about what we can do in a very short period of time because the present is very fleeting. The most important thing we need to do now, at the end of this year, is not dwell too much on the past. Take what we can, learn from it, correct the mistakes of the past, but the big thing is to actually try to find something of value that we can add to. Maybe 2024 was a good year for you, and I hope it was. But the point is that good enough? We always like to improve. We always want to improve our personal lives, every aspect of our lives. But the key thing here is that not only are we trying to improve our personal life, one of the key elements here is that we should be concerned. Turn your head to the right. Look at the person that's sitting beside you. The key element here is that life is not how great it is for you, but can you improve the life of the person that may be sitting beside you? Or maybe a neighbor, a friend. And sometimes we can even help people, and actually we don't even know them personally. That can happen. But the fruit of this, a good example of this is found in Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 through 25. But the fruit of the Spirit is life, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. If we live in the Spirit, let us walk in the Spirit. Let's read that again. If we live in the Spirit, let us walk in the Spirit. We are not here because we are here. We are here for a purpose. You're not an accident, even though that many people will say you're some biological, digital accident and it's purely by chance that you're here. That is totally, biblically wrong. You are here for a purpose. And that purpose is to glorify God, but at the same time, you've got to share those beliefs, those ideas with the people around you. And it says here, we must live in the Spirit, but we need to walk in the Spirit. We've got to be a part of Him, and He a part of us. And we have to measure that And if we did okay in 2024, what do you think we need to do in 2025? Try to be a little bit better, a little bit better, a little more purposeful, a little bit more determined. And we find we have to be positive and fill our ideas with hope. And the key element here, and mean it. In this world, particularly in this country, the most exercised muscle in your body is your mouth. We have totally, completely covered ourselves in a lot of very worthless, meaningless information, which really doesn't do anything for you, doesn't do anything for people around you, but it fills the air. One of the oddest things, that I was in the military, and I was also went overseas several times as a civilian. But one thing that really struck me as strange is that so many countries, you can walk down the street and there isn't a constant barrage of noise. And it's infiltrated even to our restaurants. I'm quickly reaching a point in life where when we go to a restaurant, we try to go on the night where fewest people are there. Why? Hey, how you doing over there? And they're carrying on their conversation like I really care. And on top of that, they're giving you all kind of personal information about what they did or didn't do or their attitude about that. And it just goes on. It just goes on. And on top of that, it's so loud, it destroys any kind of message they might have to the person they're actually talking to. They weren't talking to me. But the key element here is that when we talk, and the Bible even says this, your words should have meaning, they should have a purpose, and it should be focused to a select group of people. You're not out there just yammering, making noise. It's actually destructive, because what happens, and I majored in communication, you find out that people turn the switch off real fast. They block you out. They don't want to hear you. What you're trying to give to them, whether you really want to try to give it to them or not, really doesn't matter, because they've shut you off and they really don't want to hear you. So it must be meaningful. The world is working so hard to destroy itself. We have to show that the New Testament Christianity is a viable, reasonable alternative. Not some wild, crazy, fantasy-driven, storybook kind of thing, but something that people can see has a meaning and the purpose behind it. It wasn't a coincidence that Christ and his message was introduced to the world during the most pagan, godless, and violent empire, the Roman Empire. They lived to kill. They lived to be able to destroy and to conquer everything around them. We find that in that time, though, that the names of the empires have changed, but the game remains the same. The world is still working so hard to destroy itself and everything around it. We have to show that we have a viable, reasonable, meaningful alternative. Maybe you were successful last year. What are you going to do this year? Let me say it again. Maybe you had a very good year last year, but what are you going to do this year? You have to plan ahead. Things don't happen by accident. Churches aren't created by accident. People don't become Christians just by accident. That's fantasy. That's fantasy. Christianity is not. We talk about the future, but when we talk about the future, now we're getting into the future, we normally like to focus on our physical health and our material wealth. From a physical standpoint, we all pray for long years of health with minimal suffering and discomfort. I can speak from that personal experience. For material wealth, we're constantly looking for another year of prosperity linked to low taxes. What was the last election? What was it all about? Not only is there not going to be any low taxes, there won't be any taxes at all. If you believe that little fantasy. But the key thing is, the sum total, we need to be looking in the future, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint. What are your plans spiritually in the coming year? Will the life and the life of someone else be improved by your closer walk to God? Will your presence here truly be called a life-changing event, or like Ecclesiastes, just another passing season? The writer of Ecclesiastes is very poetic. It has some eye appeal and it really gets your attention. But the key element he was trying to make is there are so many changing events and so many seasons and so many seasonal changes, but they just come and go. We find that so many people spend their entire lives at that level where we're just here, we experience a few things, and then we go. It should be more than that. It should be a series of future questions, always looking toward the future, not necessarily for yourself, but what can you do for your family, for your friends, for this church. This church has a future. Are you trying hard to be a part of that future? Are you trying to move it from a futuristic idea into a reality? It takes hard work. It takes sacrifice. It takes commitment. And it has to happen not just 1 year, not just a few months. It takes years to really develop a church. Not only develop it, but sustain it. And it calls for commitment year after year after year. Christ is always and consistently asked for your, and I will use this word reservedly because it's not a very popular word here in America, obedience. Americans hate to obey anything. We're natural rebels. We want to do what we want to do. And the point is, we create a lot of troubles for ourselves and for the people around us. Most of the problems that we have and our social problems we have in our society is born from nothing more than simple rebellion. We've got 40, 50, 60-year-old people throwing a tantrum, and they've been in this tantrum mode for 40 or 50 or 60 years. It doesn't profit them, it doesn't profit anybody around them, and it certainly doesn't profit the community. We have to learn what Christ said from the very beginning. You must obey. When you trust and obey, old-fashioned song. It's an old song, but a very valid song. And the thing of it is, we want to know that we're not only developing and creating something of value, not only for ourselves, but we're doing something that has worth and meaning for the people around us. This is a short sermon, but the point is, I really hope and pray that you stop and think about many of the things that have been mentioned because you can't come up with the answers right now. It's going to take some serious thought, possibly for weeks or even months, to really develop a coherent plan in your personal life, which will be reflected in your purposeful life for Christ. If you've decided that you want to be a Christian, if you've decided that you want to commit your life more deeply for Him, please think about this while we stand and sing.